Hi, I'm Tim Burns, and I'm going to go over an article I have in Medium called A Vulgar Mechanics Guide to Automation with Terraform and dbt using Snowflake and AWS. And in this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can automate the process of creating a data lake and a data warehouse on Snowflake with Terraform. And then I'm going to go and use dbt to populate that warehouse based on some data, some playlist data from actual radio station playing data. One of my favorite radio stations, KAXP in Seattle. And so without further ado, let me share my screen. All right. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a makefile. And this makefile essentially ties together different commands that I run a lot while developing. So in the article, I make the strong statement that a developer should always only write and develop in a dev catalog or dev database and dev AWS infrastructure. Now, we're doing a demo, so it's going to be a demo database. So we're going to use a separate folder for building out the Terraform objects, and we're going to use as our source of truth the GitHub repository where my code is saved. So a couple of commands at the beginning of the makefile: git build init, which does the git clone. So I'm going to assume that you've already done that and cloned this into your system. And we're going to use a git pull. And what the git pull will do is it will synchronize whatever that demo data is, whatever that Terraform infrastructure we're building is exactly what's described in GitHub. So I'm going to set a build environment as a demo as our environment, and I'm going to say make build pull. And what it's going to do is it's going to run git in that folder and pull any changes. So it looks like it pulled in, let's see, one file change, couple of deletions, couple of insertions. So it's whatever's there. Let's see if it works. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to build the data lake. So this has basically two things: init the data lake and apply the data lake. I'll just talk briefly about that. So init the data lake means that we can run Terraform data lake init to initialize the Terraform infrastructure in that folder. So Terraform is going to build the hooks and so forth that it needs to build the resources in that folder. And then plan is something we'd use if we wanted to review it. And then we're just going to apply it. So I'm going to first of all, I'm going to run this command here, build, which basically first inits it and then applies it. So I'm going to say build. I'm going to call this environment equals demo. And then make directory equals build demo, and that'll do that. That'll run the makefile in that directory. And then the target I want to say is build data lake. So now Terraform is going to be off there building out a bucket. So what did it do? So Terraform has an output thing. It's telling me that it built this bucket. So why don't I just go into let's pull in some AWS. Let's go into our AWS console and check that the data lake is there. So it's going to be an S3 bucket called data lake, and it's going to be demo, and there's nothing there. So this is the S3 bucket. And this concludes the first part. I'll be editing this. Okay, so back to the makefile. We built the data lake. the S3 bucket. The next thing we want to do is build a Snowflake database here. So this is going to build a data catalog, and it's going to build a landing zone schema for that data, for the data to live in. So I'm going to take the makefile, the makefile target that I used, and I'm going to just edit it. And instead of building the data lake, I'm going to build a Snowflake DB. Now this is a layer, and it's going to be described here. So when we build layers, layers are essentially Terraform components that we minimize the dependence between the layers. So they essentially act as layers on which we build the system. So if I look at the code structure here within Terraform, I'm going to see that I've got two different types of things. I've got layers and I've got modules. We'll talk about modules next. But the layers, essentially we have two different layers. One is this data lake layer, which we just built, has the S3 resource descriptor. And then the one for the Snowflake is actually, we're using this Snowflake provider here. And then the other thing that we're doing is we are using, for the provider, it basically lets us create the database and create the schema. So notice that I'm using upper. So you should always use upper when creating database entities. Just makes your life a heck of a lot easier. And everything's going to be uniform. It's the environment catalog. And then the schema is always going to be landing zone. We just create those two entities. So here I've done build. And the target I'm going to do is, first of all, it's going to need to initialize all the get any kind of Terraform changes that have taken place, and then it's going to apply the Snowflake database, apply those Terraform resources that I just showed you. All right, so build Snowflake DB. All right, so it's going to run off and do that for me. All right, so it did it. And what happened? So if you regard the screen here, created this demo catalog. So demo catalog now has landing zone. And that's it. And the advantage of actually keeping everything in layers is you may have a database, you may not need a demo catalog. So this lets you mix and match a little bit more. It gives you some flexibility in terms of your automation infrastructure. All right, let's just go right ahead to the next thing is we're going to build out a Snowflake pipe. It's going to be just a dummy pipe because we really don't want to use Terraform for doing our hardcore data modeling types of exercises. Just not suited for that. It's really an infrastructure tool. It's not a, it's not a data modeling tool. And you'll be sorry if you try to use it as a data modeling tool. So we're just going to build this pipe. It's just a table. It's going to take a log file. It's going to have an error. We're going to show you how the errors get run. So I'm just going to do the same thing as I did before. Build Snowflake pipe. So it builds a pipe. Essentially, a pipe is an automation. Snowflake automation. It runs a copy statement. It gets information from. It gets a trigger from AWS. So basically this gives me some output here. So it gives me there's two integrations that we need to do. One is the notification integration, and the other one's the storage integration. And so it's the same user in Snowflake. Let's see, why don't I pull over my article here, and I'll kind of like show the diagram of what it is. So what we did here is what we're doing here is we have a dev catalog database that I showed. We're taking the data from that S3 bucket that we created in our data lake, and we're going to load that via the storage integration into Snowflake. And then every time any new data hits that data lake, we're going to trigger an SQS notification that we've actually configured in that last step to just auto load that data right into Snowflake. So this is just pretty much a set it and forget it kind of data lake. And then the other thing that we did in that script is we triggered a simple notification service. So basically, anytime there's an error, it's going to send me an email. Now we do need to go and add ourselves to the email. So it created that. So let's go to AWS here, log in, and we can go to simple notification service. So when you're in AWS, there's all these different services and so forth. So you probably want to check the dashboard topic. So let me just refresh. Well, I can see it right here. So Snowflake notification demos. This is a demo environment. And it looks like I have confirmed it. So let's just refresh here. If you have a notification there, if there's no notifications, you'll have to create a subscription. You can select the protocol, email protocol, sends an email to your account. You go in there, you confirm it, real simple. But looks like I have one already. Just double check it. This is it. The other thing that it did too, it's worth looking at, is within the storage integrations, we need a role. So let's look at our roles. Snowflake. This one here, this role here, basically, we're going to give Snowflake the ability to read and write on the database. Trust relationship there to Snowflake. That's about it. One more thing too that's worth looking at on S3. What we set up in S3 was a trigger. Now, once we set up one pipe, there's going to be a universal SQSQ that Snowflake's going to listen to. So that'll get added to our data lake. So if you look here into properties, you can see down here that we've got a queue. Basically, this is the queue that Snowflake listens to. So all of that infrastructure just got built, and that's the core infrastructure that really Terraform provides to us here. And just kind of digging down a little bit into it, why don't I talk about like what are all these different components? So Snowflake Pipe, this is a notification integration. Essentially, it's a resource that tells us if there's an error, send me an email. I want to know, if my pipeline fails. I really don't care if it succeeds. I mean, I assume it's going to succeed. I don't want tons and tons of emails. I just want emails if it fails. This is the topic that I just showed you. This is basically the letting Snowflake post to the topic, and then also assigning that policy. Here's an output. Put a little output here. We can hook layers together using outputs. See, this is a module. So this is, you might see when you're looking at Terraform documents like modules, layers. So a module is kind of like it's like a reusable Terraform piece. It's like almost like a stored procedure or something like that. So what this does is this module actually has all the components that we need to build out a dummy, basically builds out a dummy table. So what it did was, if I go into my demo catalog and I refresh the database here, you can see it created a table called import log. And let's just pull that up. So this import log table is an empty table. It's just got a JSON object in it. Like I said, don't use Terraform to do data modeling. This is really here to prove out the integration, not to implement your data pipeline. The stage. The stage essentially acts to tie the S3 folder to that table. So you want to have one stage for every table. It should be a one-to-one relationship. And obviously, here's my table. Pretty simple. It's a JSON object of type variant. So what I want to do next is I want to go back to my make file here, and I want to just run a test. So if I scroll through the make file, where do I have it? So I have a couple of tests here. I've set sync test data. So the test data is going to synchronize some logs. So I've got some data logs here. I've got one of them that's an error log, and I've got one of them that's a good log. So I'm just going to say environment equals demo. Let's see. Actually, say build environment. Equals demo. And just say make. And what it's going to do is it's just going to synchronize a couple of files from my local drive up to the data lake. So now here, let's go back and look at this table and just see if we can refresh this. Oh, there it is. All right, so it looks like that just happened. So this demonstrates the SQS automatically going through and populating the table. So now it's pretty much set it and forget it. So whenever a log gets entered into that folder that matches the expected format, it's going to get loaded into the database. Now, what if it doesn't match the format? So that's when we have the notification. So I'll just go to my Gmail account here. So my Gmail account, I should have an update. Oh, looks like I do. AWS notifications. Yep. Looks like I got an error message. So this demonstrates the error message on the integration, says, something's wrong with this file, error parsing out. And well, let's just check the file. What's wrong with it? Let's look at this thing. Test error.json. Yeah, this is just a log from something else. It's not JSON, so it's not going to parse. So that's the Snowpipe integration in a nutshell. So why don't we keep going? Let's talk about dbt. So all right, let's talk about dbt. Back to the make file. So the make file has actually, we're not going to use this make file. I take it back. So dbt has its own make file in a different folder in this project because dbt is really its own entity and generally needs to be self-contained. So let's look at the dbt make file. So this is the init dbt. When you initialize dbt, it creates a project for it to work in. We're not going to use this one. We're going to use the make file associated with this KEXP Snowflake project. So this is a project. It takes as my domain here. Let's look at the domain. So I've got a couple of entities in my domain. I've got a playlist. So the playlist is essentially the songs on the radio that are playing continually, and a show. The show is the radio show. So I'm guessing that's John in the Morning because it's the morning in Seattle, and John is the DJ. So it's actually Gabriel Teodros probably, which is early. It's early in Seattle. At any rate, this is the show and this is the playlist. So pretty simple. I have another project I won't go into today that basically goes out and it pulls this data in, and we'll do that. Pull it into the data lake. bring it in as a test and show how it loaded the tables. But first of all, let me just kind of like do the philosophy. So the reason why I have this off in a JSON, format and not specified in SQL is I do believe that you should abstract your schema formats. I mean, you can use tools and export the schemas for the tools in your modeling, but if you keep your schema and the constraints that you're using separate from your actual code and implementation, that gives you a lot of flexibility for tooling, for automation, and for analysis, because it takes a lot less specialization to read and parse JSON or YAML than it does SQL. So just a little bit about what's here. This is a identity key specification. This playlist key, it means it's going to be created automatically. These values here are the domain values, and then finally at the bottom here you have what I call the lineage values, or the automation values. These are values. So everything else should be nullable, and that's coming in, we don't want to make judgments about the data that comes in. We want to make judgments as we've processed. We want to let dbt and the facilities within dbt make the judgments about the data through our model, which I'm not going to deal with here, but that's what it should be. So the landing zone, create the user. This will tell us, was this done manually? Was this done by the system? The update date, that's another one that can be useful if we're going in there and we're making changes to the data at this level. Why it's called landing zone? I like to associate my lineage columns with the actual schema that it's from, because then they can stack on one another. So as we track the data through the database, we can know the lineage and have a sort of a self-describing method of getting data lineage. Whether something that's hidden, we don't want to delete things ever off of the data lake. The data lake is the data lake. We just leave that alone. But we do sometimes want to remove stuff from our warehouse. So now this is part of the warehouse, so it can be hidden. The file name, any file in the lake, this will be the file name of that, the file row number. This is, the row in the file. So we can always go back to see what that original value is. This is all about lineage, all about provenance. The raw data. Sometimes we want the raw data. Maybe there's something we missed. So it's good to have the raw data in place, just as as part of the lineage. We don't distinguish data, metadata or domain data. We treat the data all the same. That's a common best practice. So let's just go through how we can make this happen. All right. So again, a makefile, a different makefile. So this makefile here runs through dbt. So dbt generally is for processing models. The step of loading the data in the database, it's kind of a little bit outside the scope of dbt. A lot of times you use something like Fivetran or some other tool, Airbyte, to load the data into Snowflake, or basically as a pipe. What I'm doing here is this pretty simple way to just create a dbt macro. So this macro here, you give it a schema name, a table name, a storage integration, S3 URL, and some properties, and it'll go through and it'll create all the entities that we need. So at some level, this is equivalent to what I showed before in Terraform, or certainly similar to this module called Snowflake Tables. But this one, not a good strategy. This one, Good strategy. All right. So because we want to keep, once something has a domain, once something has business meaning, we really want to keep all that together in one project. That's important as much as we can. So I'm just going to go here and find the target. Let's see. Yeah, it's so the environment's a demo. Yeah, we need to apply it because there's no table, there's nothing there. So we don't need to delete anything. So let's just make it apply it. Boom. All right, so it did that. So what did it do? Well, created a couple of tables. Created a playlist table. So these are the columns that I talked about in the JSON file. These are the columns in the middle here. These are the domain level columns. These are the metadata columns or the lineage columns. It did playlist, and it did show. And if we actually, we can just check to see our smoke test. Let's go back here. Maybe the first thing we do is use, well, I can just change it to a demo catalog, and then within demo catalog, I use a landing zone, and I can show the stages. So you can see the stages that it created. These are different stages. So import shows, just describe that one. Describe stage, see what it did. So it created me a stage. It's got a bunch of good stuff in it. It's a storage integration. So this is the storage integration that we had. And then let's show the pipes. Created a pipe for me to show the pipes. Sure. Let's show describe pipe, import show. Okay, so this is the pipe it created. The database name, the schema name. This is the copy statement. So this copy statement essentially does all the variable conversions. That's actually something you do want to do when you're bringing the data in. I do recommend that rather than bringing in just raw, JSON table. It gives you a better queryability. You can do more with the data. But it's essentially the data is as is, and then we have at the very last, we have our just our raw data. We've got our metadata file row number and our file name, basically just coming in naturally on the system. I'm guessing these tables are empty. Yep, they're empty. There's no data. So what we need to do here is let's go back to our make file here. And this is going to be at the Snowflake level. So what I want to do is, let's look in the make file. Let me pull that make file up and describe what I want to do to test this out. So what I want to do, I showed you the test of syncing the test data, which is just that log data. Sometimes it fails. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take from my production data lake, and I'm just going to copy the data for the month of February into this demo data lake. So let me just see. Okay, build environment. Okay, build environment is demo sync. What's the data? Real data. So sync some real data. It's going to pull that data in. Nice. All right. And now we just kind of, let me go back to our, let's go back to our smoke test in analytics here. Demo catalog, kind of see. We can actually run this one here. I like to convert to JSON before I do it, just so I can get kind of something nice. So it looks like we've got a whole bunch of stuff, outstanding messages on the channel that it's sent. It's got stuff coming in. Let's just see. Let's see what's doing. Oh, looks like we've got it. Yeah. So yeah, so it looks like we've loaded the data. We have a lot of data for the shows that are there. And let's just see what the data we have. So it looks like the morning show early, you know, that data there. Then we also have here, we have the playlist data coming in. Here's all the different messages we have. And then let's just look at this data too and validate it. And great. Looks like, okay, yep. So we have the data, the month of February. Looks like it included a couple of things from just midnight, just that I always kind of want to be a little bit careful about that if you're certain applications, but let's just see what songs they were playing back then. So we got Frankie Rose and the Avalanches, Jim James, all sorts of good stuff. So listen, I hope this was helpful. Please hit like, subscribe to my channel. Seek me out on Medium. I publish a lot of articles on Medium. And hey, have a great day. All right, bye.